In the heart of the small town of Elderswood, there was an ancient forest that no one dared to enter after dark. The locals called it the Whispering Woods because, on quiet nights, you could hear the trees murmuring secrets. Tales of those who ventured too deep into the forest and never returned were passed down from generation to generation. For years, the forest remained untouched, feared, and avoided. But that all changed when a group of friends, Anna, Mark, Lisa, and Tom, decided to test the legends. They were young, curious, and eager to prove that the stories were just myths. Little did they know that the trees were alive with something far more sinister than they could ever imagine. The group gathered at the edge of the forest as the sun began to set. The air was thick with anticipation, but also with a sense of dread that none of them wanted to acknowledge. Mark, the most adventurous of the group, led the way, armed with a flashlight and a map that he had found in the town's old library. As they ventured deeper into the forest, the trees seemed to close in around them. The whispers began soft at first, barely noticeable, like the rustling of leaves. But as they moved further away from the safety of the town, the whispers grew louder, more distinct, as if the trees were speaking a language of their own. The group laughed nervously, trying to brush off the eerie feeling that had settled over them. But the laughter soon died as they realized they were no longer alone. The deeper they went, the more the forest seemed to change. The trees were gnarled and twisted, their branches reaching out like skeletal hands. The ground was uneven, covered in a thick carpet of leaves that seemed to move beneath their feet. And then they found the first sign, an old, weathered signpost with words carved into it. "Turn back." "Just some old prank," Mark scoffed, but there was an edge to his voice that betrayed his uncertainty. Anna, always the cautious one, suggested they heed the warning, but Tom and Lisa insisted they press on. The air grew colder, and the whispers turned into voices, low, indistinct, but undeniably there. The trees swayed, though there was no wind, and shadows danced on the edges of their vision. Something was watching them. As night fell, the forest became a labyrinth. The path they had been following seemed to vanish, replaced by twisted roots and thick underbrush. The map was useless, and the flashlight's beam barely cut through the darkness. Panic began to set in. They were lost, and the whispers were growing louder, almost angry. Lisa swore she saw something move between the trees, but when she turned to look, it was gone. Mark tried to keep everyone calm, but his bravado was fading. He had led them into this, and now he had no idea how to get them out. The forest seemed alive, and it was toying with them. The group huddled together, trying to decide what to do. They were tired, scared, and desperate. But as they argued, the ground beneath them shifted, and Tom was suddenly yanked into the darkness by unseen hands. His screams echoed through the forest, but they were quickly drowned out by the howling of the wind and the whispers of the trees. The group chased after him, but it was no use. Tom was gone, swallowed by the forest. Fear took over. They realized they were not alone in the woods, that something ancient and malevolent was hunting them. The whispers were no longer just voices, they were warnings, and they had ignored them. With Tom gone, the group was in disarray. They ran blindly through the forest, desperate to escape. But the more they ran, the more disoriented they became. It was as if the forest was shifting around them, leading them in circles. Eventually, they stumbled into a clearing. In the center stood an ancient, twisted tree, its bark blackened and its branches bare. The whispers grew louder as they approached, and they realized the voices were coming from the tree itself. Mark, driven by desperation, approached the tree, but as he reached out to touch it, the ground beneath him gave way. He fell into a hidden pit, his screams cutting through the night. Anna and Lisa watched in horror as the earth swallowed him whole. Anna and Lisa were the only ones left. They were terrified, exhausted, and losing hope. The forest had taken their friends, and now it was coming for them. The whispers were no longer just voices, they were commands. Leave ... or stay forever. But there was no way out. The trees seemed to close in around them, trapping them in the clearing with the twisted tree. And then they saw a figure emerging from the shadows, a man whose face was obscured by a hood, his eyes glowing in the darkness. He spoke in a voice that echoed with the whispers of the forest. He told them that the forest demanded a sacrifice, that it had always demanded one, and that they had been chosen. The figure revealed himself as the guardian of the forest, a servant of the ancient spirits that dwelled within the trees. He told them that the forest had been awakened by their intrusion, that it required an offering to be appeased. Anna and Lisa were paralyzed with fear. They had no choice but to comply, to participate in the ritual that the guardian demanded. They watched in horror as he carved symbols into the ground, chanting in a language they did not understand. The wind howled, and the trees seemed to come alive, their branches twisting and writhing like serpents. The ground beneath them shook, and they realized that they were standing on the graves of those who had been sacrificed before them. As the ritual reached its climax, the forest seemed to explode with energy. The whispers became a deafening roar, and the ground cracked open, revealing a chasm of darkness beneath them. But in that moment of chaos, Anna saw an opportunity. She grabbed Lisa's hand and ran, tearing through the underbrush with a strength she didn't know she had. The guardian's voice echoed behind them, but they didn't look back. They ran until their lungs burned, until the whispers faded into the distance. The forest tried to stop them, throwing obstacles in their path, but they pushed on, driven by sheer terror. And then, just as they thought they couldn't run any further, they broke through the trees and into the light of dawn. They had made it out. Anna and Lisa collapsed on the edge of the forest, gasping for breath. They were alive, but they were forever changed. The forest had taken their friends, and they would carry the scars of that night for the rest of their lives. The townsfolk found them later that morning, huddled together and shaking with fear. They told their story, but few believed them. The forest had always been a place of mystery, and now it had claimed more lives. But Anna and Lisa knew the truth. They had seen the darkness that dwelled within the trees, had felt the malevolent force that controlled the forest, and they knew that it would never rest, that it would always be waiting for its next victim. Years passed, and Anna and Lisa tried to move on with their lives, but the memories of that night never left them. The forest haunted their dreams, its whispers calling to them in the dead of night. Eventually, they knew they had to go back. They had to face the forest one last time, to find closure for themselves and for the friends they had lost. They returned to Elderswood, to the edge of the Whispering Woods. This time, they were prepared. They brought tools, maps, and each other. But as they entered the forest, they realized that nothing could prepare them for what lay ahead. The forest was waiting for them. The whispers were louder, more insistent, as if the trees remembered them. And deep within the forest, the guardian was waiting too, ready to complete the ritual that had been interrupted all those years ago. The forest was relentless, but Anna and Lisa were determined. They fought their way through the trees, through the memories and the fear, until they reached the clearing where it had all begun. The twisted tree was still there, its bark blackened and its branches bare. The ground was still marked with the symbols of the ritual, and the air was thick with the presence of the spirits that dwelled within the forest. The guardian appeared, but this time Anna and Lisa were ready. They had come to end the curse, to destroy the power that the forest held over them. They confronted the guardian, demanding an end to the ritual, an end to the sacrifices. The forest roared in anger, the trees shaking with fury. But Anna and Lisa stood their ground. They had come too far to turn back now. In a final act of defiance, they destroyed the symbols that bound the spirits to the forest. The ground shook, and the air was filled with a deafening silence as the forest began to collapse in on itself. The guardian vanished, and the twisted tree crumbled to dust. The whispers faded into nothingness, and the forest was silent. Anna and Lisa had won. They had broken the curse, had freed themselves and the town from the darkness that had haunted them for so long. But as they left the forest for the last time, they couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching them, that the trees were still whispering, waiting for the day when the curse would be reborn.